Welcome to the Handcrafted Podcast, the business of making things. I'm Paul, founder of Philadelphia Table Company and the Handcrafted Network, and I believe great craftsmanship deserves great business strategy. This podcast is for makers who want to build not just great products, but a thriving business. Each episode will dive into the mindset, systems, and skills that turn craft into success. All right, guys, welcome back to the Handcrafted Podcast. Hope everybody has been doing great. I've had a number of people I've been getting a chance to talk to, a lot of people reaching out via email, phone calls, all that stuff. It's been rad. So, quick reminder, this podcast is brought to you by the Handcrafted Network. Handcrafted Network is an online community of makers. I'm now saying makers because we've had a bunch of people sign up this week that were... one's a ceramicist and painter. The other does leather work. Had a bunch of other people that are starting to join, which is really great. A lot of the content, they've actually both been on group calls and have expressed how helpful the group calls have been. The group call was, despite being sort of like a group of people who do wood stuff. So we are running a special. Like I said, we're doing a free, you could do a free trial for a week. Check it out. It'll prompt you to do a one-on-one call with me, and we'll get to connect. We'll get to see if the group is kind of right for you. So if you're kind of on the fence about it, maybe now's the time to jump in for that. We're just doing a quick little summer special thing. So hop on that before we switch back to the other way we were doing it. So with that said, if you're interested in joining, just go to thehandcraftednetwork.com or email me, paul@thehandcraftednetwork.com, or there's a link below in the show notes, in the comments, in the whatever the heck is below this, that gives you a prompt to just click. You can sign up, yada, yada, yada. You can also reach out to me on all the various socials, whether that be the Handcrafted Network or the Philadelphia Table Company, Instagram, all of that sort of stuff. All right, so today's podcast episode. So there's been a lot of people, like I said, who have been joining, taking advantage of that free trial thing, and I've been doing a lot of one-on-one calls with people, and it's been really helpful to get a feel for what people are doing, what's working, as well as like kind of connecting with others and brainstorming a little bit. So today I wanted to talk about owning your audience, owning your client base, essentially. So one of the people I was talking to sets up a farmer's market. The other person sets up at farmer's markets. The other person I was talking to has like an art gallery. The other person I was talking to has a display thing in like another gallery type of thing. And all of which were saying they hand out business cards in hopes that these people kind of like reach back out to them or if somebody's interested. But I wanted to flip the script on that. So when I was in a touring band, the big thing was email lists. So what we would do is we put the email list out and kind of go around and like collect emails. It was actually kind of a fun way to go about doing this because, we're a bunch of guys in a band. You get to go meet girls and talk to other people and all this sort of stuff. You get to ask for the email, all that. And what's really great about that is we owned that audience. It was, you're not relying on social media. So the big thing is, and, we were talking about this a little bit on the group call, which was like, if you're relying on social media to be your audience, and look, I'm guilty of this. So everything I'm saying, I need to take my own advice on. And I know Jim, my marketing guy who works with me, is going to be like, Paul, you got to listen to your own advice here. So with that said, I'm putting this out there to sort of say, okay, I'm going to follow this sort of stuff. So anyways, if you're building an audience on social media, you have to remember that social media audience doesn't belong to you. That social media, if it's on Instagram, whatever, belongs to Zuckerberg. If it's on X, I guess belongs to Elon. I don't know who here is building it on X, or if you're doing it on YouTube or whatever. So that audience actually doesn't belong to you. The audience that does belong to you is an email list that you can kind of curate and hold and collect. So what I had suggested to all of those people was to not just hand out business cards, but to collect emails back. So when you collect emails back, it allows you to respond back and forth to those people, and you then own the audience. And you can also send things like follow-ups and all that sort of stuff. So I think a really helpful thing would be, and what I'm planning on doing in the near future here, is doing email campaigns, email marketing. So email marketing to me isn't going to be about, and you need to take a luxury approach to email marketing. And I'm not on Louis Vuitton's email list. I don't know if they do send emails or not, but the way I would envision something that is sort of a luxury way of doing this, I want to kind of pull a playbook out of what Patagonia has done in the past. So Patagonia, when they first originally started, this was like long before emails, they would send out flyers, but the flyers weren't really like catalogs. So this was like in the time period of like people doing catalog shopping, like the LL Bean catalog and all that sort of stuff. But what they decided to do instead of like doing like an actual catalog is they would send out almost like a journal or like a magazine. So they would have somebody photographing and documenting somebody climbing Everest in like Patagonia gear. And the entire story would basically be, and they still do this in their marketing today. So if you get any sort of like Patagonia sort of, you know, anything in the mail, pamphlets, all that sort of stuff. They even do this a bit on their email. Their email still is starting to feel a little bit more markety now, but it's more narrative based. So it's like, hey, this person climbed Everest in the Patagonia tech jacket or whatever the heck it is that they're calling. And the article is really more about the climb to the summit of Everest than it is about the actual jacket and gear they used. So they kind of casually mention the gear. They have obviously a lot of photos of the gear, and what they're doing is sort of telling the story of like a use case or making something that's a little bit different. And you guys know on this podcast, I'm always talking about like when people go left, I like to go right. I like to do something that's a little bit different, something that sort of stands out. So the way I envision doing an email list for myself, and maybe what I think you guys should start implementing, is story and narrative based marketing. So sending an email that's not necessarily like, hey, check out our new dining table now, $5,099 or something, right? I think the better way to do it is to talk about the story of how the table came to be, things that are like behind the build or like whatever it is that you're making, how that piece of artwork came to be, what's the story, what's the inspiration, what's the narrative behind it, right? So I envision us being able to collect, and one of the reasons why haven't really launched the email list yet is we're not great enough at capturing content like throughout the build with like really good photography. We do it a lot on our phones, but we're not using like our actual like pro camera to sort of like outline sort of the process. But in general, the idea for me is to start saying like a behind the build of, you know, this is a recent project we just finished, recent commissioned 120-inch walnut table with brass inlays, yada yada. And the whole thing is more of just a narrative, a story about how we put it together, how it came to be, what it was like working with the client, where it's going. I don't know if I would mention a client name, but you know, maybe talk about the relationship between you and the client, or if it's like maybe a commercial project, hey, check out the new project that we just did at, you know, the most recent whatever restaurant in New York. This design concept was started by this group and we executed it or whatever. So like telling this kind of story, obviously you don't want it to be super long. People don't have a ton of time to read emails. So I'm envisioning an email that has a decent amount of photos to it with pretty quick short copy. And then at the very bottom, just a very small call to action that basically just says, interested in working with us, click here or something, or send us an email, or we would love to work with you as well, and put it down there. And what I think is like really good about that is maybe you do these things monthly. I think weekly is probably what like a lot of like marketing people do. That feels like too much. Monthly feels good. Quarterly, I think, is what Patagonia used to do with like their sort of, they put a ton of money into those. So I think they used to do it quarterly. But even just something like, you know, that's consistent. So it's like maybe the first Monday of the month or something, an email blast goes out and it talks about the previous projects. So say we're doing July, we talk about, hey, like June was an amazing month for us. These are the things that we finished in June, or do like a project highlight. And what I love about that is it just, I feel like, can get people a little bit more engaged. I feel like you can get a higher ticket value out of it. It's more of like, I always talk about the luxury strategy approach. I think it's more of the luxury strategy, because luxury strategy, as we talk about, is all about narrative. It's all about storytelling. It's all about like the background and the importance behind it. It's not about that specific object. It's about like what's like around it. Like we talk about before, you know, it's like the Rolex isn't necessarily about just like the specific Rolex, of course, but it's like, what's the narrative around Rolex? What does Rolex represent? What does like Porsche represent? What does Ferrari represent? What do these other like sort of like, what does Louis Vuitton represent? Like what are these sort of like story narrative type things that are carrying the brand forward. So quick takeaways I would say is start getting an email list going. If you are in one of those situations where you do farmers markets or you do sort of like open galleries, I would actively ask people for their email address instead of giving away your card. Yes, it's a harder lift. I mean, last time we talked about sort of doing the things that you need to do that feel uncomfortable. And to me, this is definitely one of those uncomfortable things of basically being like, hey, can I have your email? Because some people are kind of weird about that. But you need to get yourself into an uncomfortable position. And it also kind of starts conversation as well with those people. So if somebody's just kind of like casually just like walking by, like looking at things, maybe picking things up or looking at a cutting board or something that you made, and then they seem interested, you can just say, hey, I'm Paul. I own the company. What's your name? If you don't mind, would you love to stay in the loop about the things we're doing? I'd love to collect your email. Or you could just have an email thing listed in front of you. One of those like, just like a paper thing that you then transfer over. And from there, there's a whole bunch of different like email things you can use. Like Go High Level is something that I use for Handcrafted Network. You can also do other things like I think MailChimp is still out there. That's what we used to use when I was in a touring band. And so with that said, I do the email list with the Handcrafted Network. For those of you guys who are on the email list, you'll notice the emails are very narrative based. There are a lot of telling stories and things that kind of like read casually. It's not like, hey, buy now, do this, do that, right? Because to me, it's like what I'm trying to provide is value, and that's what I care most about. And same thing with PTC. I want to provide value. I want to provide inspiration for people. I want people to really feel invested in the brand so that they then invest in us and like start to work with us. All right, guys, quick little podcast here. Hope this one was really helpful. I've been thinking about this a lot, so I'm going to try implementing this. I think hopefully by the fall, I'm starting to collect some photos now and trying to figure out what our first sort of like narrative and story is going to be. And I guess the other thing too to mention is I think as you start collecting more, it's helpful to like categorize by people. So when I collect emails through Pipedrive, which is like my CRM, online CRM, I actually talked about that a little bit on the last group call, as well as with a private client that I had yesterday. So with Pipedrive or any sort of CRM, I sort of like you can define who's who. So I have like a residential category, I have interior design residential, and then I have interior design commercial. So I sort of envision sort of like 3 different emails going to 3 different people. So interior design, obviously going to be interior design focused. Direct to consumer is going to be a different thing. And then interior design commercial, architect commercial, etc. is going to be a whole different thing. So I think having those sort of 3 different things isolated can be really helpful because then you could just like really hit people where it's at. All right, if you have any questions about this, or if you have questions you want for me to include in a Office Hours episode, send me an email, paul@thehandcraftednetwork.com. Again, we are running a quick little free trial section here. So if you have a chance or you've been curious or wondering if it's right for you, now's a great time to go jump on. Just click the link below or go to thehandcraftednetwork.com, and that will then prompt you to do a one-on-one call with me, which I thoroughly enjoy. It says it's 15 minutes, but yesterday I ended up talking to somebody for an hour just because it's something I really enjoy doing. All right, guys, hope everybody has a great week, and talk to you soon. Peace.